Cold water is my favorite time to catch a giant bass. You won't catch as many, but the ones you hook are big. Today I'll show you 3 fixes that dial you in on where to look, how to find them, and how to make them bite. And stick around for the bonus at the end, because when you go might be the biggest key of all. So let's talk about catching bass in cold water. And to me, that's water temps of about 50 or lower. So we'll talk about where to find them, how to locate them, and once you find them, how to catch them. We'll start off with where to look for them, and I'll put up a map here. So basically, this is a big creek channel off a lake, not a small cove, like a whole creek, a big creek arm. And what I'm looking for in this cold water, places where I think there's a big spawning area, a lot of flat, shallow water, which means about 5 or 8 feet or less in the back of the creek where they're going to spawn, I know there's a big population. Now, what I'm talking about are more shallow water fish. Obviously, in the wintertime with jig head minnows and Alabama rigs, jerkbaits, all that stuff, you can catch a lot of fish that are more main lake fish on live scope, floating around. They're chasing bait out in the middle. Now, what I'm talking about in this video are more the shallow water fish. They're more resident. They hang out on the bank more, or they may fish during the day at times chasing bait, but they come up to the shore to feed. But a lot of these ones actually live in these great big coves. That's why you need a big creek like this. These fish a lot of times never leave. So the one you see here, pretty good sized cove, and the gray line going down the middle, that's the old creek channel. Now this is for reservoirs. I'll talk about natural lakes here in a minute as well, but these are for man-made reservoirs. They have the old ditches, the old channels. So once you go into one of these creeks, the #1 rule of thumb is deep water access. That's the where part. They're going to get shallow a lot of the time. You can catch them in 1 foot of water in the winter, but usually they're going to be close to deep water access. That means they can get back to 10, 20, 30 feet, and the clearer it is, the deeper the water they'll want. But basically, they want deeper water nearby. And that works if it's in a farm pond or something too, near the dam. That's deep water access. I'll show you a couple places on here where they like to hang out. Now, if there's a warming trend, if the weather's nice, or even when the front comes and there's a lot of wind and it's, it's just one of those biting type days, they can be anywhere on this cove. If it's fairly shallow, if this thing, they can roam all around it. If this is deeper, say in the middle, it's 40 feet of water, 50 feet of water, well, then they're probably more on the banks. But basically, they're going to be roaming around. Once the cold front comes, though, or you get a cooling trend where the water temperature really starts dropping off, they're typically going to fall back to deeper water. And that's going to be a couple different things. One, that gray line there, that's the creek channel, so that's the deepest water. So in that case, when it gets cold, I'm not fishing the bank. I'm going to follow this creek channel more. Now, if there's wood on the end of it, like old standing timber that was flooded, if there's grass like hydrilla and milfoil and stuff on the edge, I'm going to fish that. Any humps and stuff, bends in the creek channel, those become important. So instead of hitting the bank, then I'm going to follow the creek channel. And if it's a shallow or muddy one, that might be the creek channel in 5 feet of water. If this is really clear water, they might be around that creek channel in grass out to 10 or 15 feet deep, and around trees or just humps and anywhere from 20 to 30 feet deep. So how deep is relative. The main thing is they want that deeper water access next to it. Now this map is taken right off of Navionics on my phone. Any of the phone apps you can get with the good topo maps are going to show you the creek channels and the depth there. So it's pretty easy to actually follow these creek channels these days with the mapping. Same thing on my Garmin units on my boat. It's easy to follow those. But another thing you can fish, and you can do this from the bank, or you really don't need mapping to be able to do it, are channel swings. Let me put up a second map here, and where you see these arrows, you can see the graph or the map there where that gray line, that creek channel goes really close to the shore, kind of kisses the shore there. That first one, it comes in there by those couple little islands, and you see it touch the shore and come back out, make a few turns, and then that second arrow in the middle, that one, it kisses the shore 2 times there. So you see twice where it brushes against the shore, and then to the very left in the back of the creek there, you see again where it touches the shore one last time before it turns into a river in the back. So those creek channel bends, if you have a map, you can see those really clearly. Those are key. But then also, a lot of times you don't even need to see that on a map. When you look at a bank and it's going to be pretty flat, it's not going to slope very much. And all of a sudden, you're going to see where it goes from being pretty flat to all of a sudden getting pretty steep. That tells you that it's probably where the creek channel comes against it, and that's a quick drop-off, more of a bluff. What that gives you is you're in an area where there's a lot of shallow water, and then all of a sudden there's deep water right next to the bank there. So those fish that are hanging out at the bank, that's where they're going to drop back to when there's a cold front. Those channel swings, those are money. Whether you have the map or not, you can see them pretty easily, and that's where they go when the cold fronts hit. And then I'll put up another map here. Here's a really obvious one. Don't need a map to see these points. Main lake points, secondary points, points everywhere. They are basically, again, on the shoreline where it's a knob or something, and you can see I circled them here where the land kind of makes a little knob or a knoll there. It sticks out in the lake a ways, and that's where those bank fish can go from shallow, have a lot of shallow area, but then they can move out to the main lake, and a lot of those fish will spend most of the winter on those points. They kind of use ones farther out. When it's colder, when it's warmer, they move back into the creeks farther, and we'll get in the ones in the shallower water, but the points are always money. It's shallow water, but quick deep water access next to it. Now, if your lake's a natural lake, you're still probably going to get some channel swings or quick drop-offs. Now, they're sometimes harder to read on the shore because you're not going to see those bluffy areas. Sometimes you can see that, though, where it's a quicker drop. The big thing, though, most natural lakes are going to have weed edges. They're kind of a bowl, but they're going to have areas where there's big flats, then all of a sudden they get deep in a hurry. And those corners where instead of making a point, they make a corner. So a point kind of sticks out at you like the camera. Inside turn would be more like this. So the deep water pushes way up into the shallows, where a point, the shallow water pushes out into the deep water, and inside turn, that deep water comes up into the shallow areas. That quick access to deep water in those natural lakes, if you're fishing natural lakes versus a reservoir, look for those inside turns, and especially if there's grass along this edge right here, man, those things load up. And once you find a spot where it's holding them, that's pretty much year after year they'll sit in those spots. Tip number 2 is to cover water fast to find the fish. This time of year, even though I circled a lot of areas on those maps, there's not a lot of places where the fish are actually going to be at. Those are the places I'm going to check, those channel swings, those points, the channel bends and stuff. But man, there's like 95% of the water is just dead water. Once you find them, there's a lot of times a group there. But if you fish slowly and really finesse fish or stay in one spot for a long time, you're going to waste a lot of time in areas that just don't have fish in them. So you want to cover water quickly, keep fishing and fishing until you find fish. Once you get a bite, then you're going to slow down and work those over. But until then, you better cover a lot of water. I use basically 2 baits to do that. If there's grass on the lake, bait number 1 is a pretty obvious choice. You can probably guess that, bladed jigs. I'll throw these things on grass, and pretty much I'll lock a bladed jig like this slobber knocker in my hand, and I'll throw it pretty much all day. I'll just keep grinding on them. I feel like I can find the fish. I can do stop and go. I can still kind of fish it slow in the strike zone. I don't have to reel in real fast, but I'm not making a whole lot of casts in one area. I'm getting with the wind at my back, and I'm going to go cover some area or a lot of water. I'm going to look for all those high percentage spots like the points and the creek channel bends and stuff, channel swings, but I'm going to keep on casting until I find one that's loaded up. Blade jig plows through the grass so well, it's definitely my go-to if you have a grassy lake. Now, a lot of lakes don't have grass on them. If you find rock, that hard cover in the wintertime, that's really good. Hard cover holds them a lot, riprap, natural rock and stuff. But then if you don't have that, they'll just get around brush and laydowns and just channel swings, anything like that, a change in the bank, a hump or something. Crankbaits are my go-to, and I used to throw a ton of these, and in the last couple of years I really consolidated this. I have basically 3 go-tos now, and the first one is basically what it used to be my square bill, but this is a money badger. But any of the square bills in shallow water, when you're going say 3 feet or less and there's not a lot of grass cover there, shallow running crankbaits are really good. I used to use a lot of the square bills. Like I said, now this is the shallow money badger. I can truck this one if there's a rocky bank. I really like to crawl this really fast. It's really wide wobbling. Most all these square bills are like that and moves a lot of water. These are good in that shallow water situation. Now, if it's kind of in between, anywhere from about 3 feet out to 10 feet, I try 2 different things. Basically, the tight wiggling crankbaits, and then the wider wobbling. So this happens to be the wide wobbling. That's your wiggle warts and all those like deep little ends. And there's tons of these. This is the classic style crankbait. Then the more finessey style, the tighter wiggling ones, this is a Fritz side here. A lot of these, are balsa. They're just tighter, more finesse. So it's hard for me to predict from one day to the next what they're going to bite. The wide wobbling pushes more water, and actually underwater they're going to feel that a little more. Sometimes when they're more aggressive, that helps them find it better. If it's in muddy water, it helps them locate it. If it's really clear and the bite's tough, a lot of times that's when I'll start with the tight wiggling one. I just feel that's more finessey. But the Fritz side, you can go with the silent version. So this is really finessey. It just it's a tight wiggle here. It's not putting out much sound or moving much water. Whereas like the dime is going to really roll and push, and it's a wider wobble. So those two are what I'll go to. The Fritz side, this doesn't run quite as deep. So again, this is a little bit shallower. The wide wobbling ones, I can get a little bit deeper. So if I get out to about 10 feet, like a dime 10 works pretty well. But I like the little 4 and 6. So this is the 4 here. This is the 6. You can see these are small. They're tiny little crankbaits. I can throw them on a baitcaster really far, and they get down. The 4 actually runs about 5 feet. It doesn't run 4, and the 6 runs about 7. So I can get down fairly deep. But a lot of times they're just not eating a whole lot in the wintertime, and I've caught a lot of really good fish in the wintertime with pretty small baits. So like that 4 in a crawfish color, you see a brown crawfish, the red ones, those seem to work well in winter. I'll go shad colors and stuff too. But basically, I'm going to cover a lot of water with these until I get bit. Now, tip number 3, I kind of hinted at it before, but the fish, they're typically in groups. They're not loners very often, especially after the cold fronts. So once you find them, slow down in the area is tip number 3. And that means a couple things. One, that means hanging out in an area once you find them. Don't just catch a couple and move by, or change up a lure a little bit and then say, I fished it, and leave. That means stay there, fish that area repeatedly, make repeated casts over and over, maybe at different angles, but hang out for a long time. And then once you've fished it out, you feel like you can't get another bite. What I like to do is come back and fish those key areas again time after time, because they'll typically load up there. Once you get a little milk run, you may find you throw that crankbait around, say, half a day, and you find 2-3 spots where you caught them. Well, once I find that, I'm going to go back to those 3 spots just over and over. I'm just going to kind of rotate and just keep on making laps around to all those, because they'll keep on reloading. For whatever reason the fish are there, they'll typically hang out there. But then I also fish slowly as well in the area, and I'll do a couple things. One, if you caught them on that bladed jig or on the crankbait, a lot of times you can catch a number of fish there, not just one. It's kind of your bird dog. It tells you where they're at. But if you keep grinding and making cast after cast in there, very retrieve, a lot of times you can catch a lot on that same bait there. So if you caught the first one on a crankbait, you can probably catch more on it, and same with the bladed jig. But what I really do damage with and catch a lot of my big ones is a jig. And you see this one, I go with a big profile a lot of times in winter versus the with the crankbait and the blade jig, I'm going a little bit smaller a lot of times. With the jig, I like a big profile, big chunky one, and I've been playing around with this for a while. This is the new Flux Gill. I've been using it in the fall. You probably noticed it's on the back of my slobber knocker too. So I'm not sure if this one will catch them as well. In the wintertime, kind of my mainstay is either a chunk or I like the creature hog, which are just kind of not action craw trailers. I just like, flappers back there that have a little bit of action, but not too much. This one's kind of the same deal. It's a bluegill type profile, so I'm curious to try this one in the winter. But basically, you don't want a lot of action on your tails. And in the summertime and the spring, I'm snapping my jig. I want this thing to pop, and I'll shake it in place and lift drop and climbing it and pitch it in, let it go to the bottom, hop it. In the wintertime, no way. It seems like letting it sit on the bottom is a lot of times the best thing you can do. Not shaking it, not doing anything. Just sitting there and let it sit on the bottom. And then drag it forward. Rod tip down and just pull forward instead of lifting it, crawling it up. Now, if you get to brush or something or grass, you kind of have to crawl it up and over. But if it's just basically the bottom, areas that you had bites, throw it out there, slow drag the jig through there. Pull it through a little bit. And once you figure out a spot where you get bit, and a lot of times you have to kind of change your angle. You'll fish around, not get bit. Well, once you get bit, you can keep throwing through that same angle over and over. And it may be on your 3rd cast in there, you catch a fish, and your 4th, you're like, oh, this is pretty good. They're in here. And then you might go 30 more casts, not get another one. You're about ready to leave, and then you throw in there and you get another one. And then you grind away for another 20 casts. You may get 5 or 6 fish there just casting over and over. And like I said, you come back 2 hours later, catch them again. I like to let them sit at least 30 minutes. But fishing a bait slow and really working over those key areas, I can't emphasize how much that works in the wintertime. Now, from one year to the next, this changes. You'll get grass grows different. The water color is a little bit different. The amount of current in the lake's different that year. The water level gets up or down. There are some spots that are habitually good, year after year, but usually every year it's a little bit different. But the neat thing about wintertime fishing is once you find those spots, they're going to be good all winter long up until like the next spring. And then the bonus tip, here's the other thing. I found this out over guiding years and years where you're out there every single day and you can kind of see when the fish bite, when they don't. Bass's metabolism is slower in the wintertime. They're cold-blooded. That means that basically how much they need to eat actually changes when it's colder. So they don't eat as much. Their zones of or windows of activity are not as long. So instead of feeding all day, a lot of times it's kind of a short flurry. Maybe it's a couple hours versus in the summertime, it seems like they're ready to eat most all day. What I found are you really need to be on the water at key times when the water's cold, especially that winter time. So what I mean by that, early and late. First thing in the morning, I know it's a lot of times really cold out there, but if you get there first thing in the morning, there'll be a window for like an hour where they eat. What I prefer a lot of times in the winter and cold weather is that late afternoon bite. The sun's been out, it's the warmest time of the day. If the high temperature maybe is only 40 degrees, 45 or something, it starts out 20, it's 45 in the afternoon, then, it's a little bit warmer. The sun beating down feels pretty good. And a lot of times those bass in that last hour and a half, 2 hours a day, really bite good. And then the other thing are bite windows when a front's coming through, when it's, gray skies and you get the wind blowing and stuff, those kind of nasty drizzling, sleet, flurries and stuff. The fish really bite then when there's pressure changes, when that pressure's dropping. So when a front's coming through, you just have those gray kind of days. That's when they'll bite during the middle of the day the best. When it's after the front and the winds calm down, it's sunny and slick, or you just kind of get extended warm sunny days where it's kind of a nice little warm up. It's nice for you and me, but they don't typically bite that well for me. It's either those gray periods, nasty sleet drizzle and stuff, or early and late, but that is when they really bite. So it's a great time to take a trip for about 2 or 3 hours, get out there late in the afternoon, hit the key window, and you catch more fish that way. If you want more of a deep dive on how I fish jigs and crankbaits, check out these videos. Or I also have my new podcast where I interview top pros and they break down how they fish baits and patterns. Check those out as well.